minus 20 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Good morning, everybody. It is time for week 3 of college football. We are back again with Out of the Tunnel here on Jackwagon Sports Network. Very fun episode to bring to you guys. Nick is still avoiding us and just hanging out at the beach, so it's just Slade and I this time. But we still have a lot to bring to you. We're very excited. Also, just want to give a quick shout out to Fairfield. They won their first game last night, and they beat Nick's Biglerville Canners. So shout out for that. But let's get right into our show for you today. We're going to start off the day with Slade here. And the news came out yesterday of how much money Texas spent on their recruiting trip, especially for Archie Manning's weekend. And it kind of brought up an interesting point of how much money is too much. Now, granted, spent all this money. They got a lot of commits out of this trip. But at the same time, I feel like hundreds of thousands of dollars is a little excessive. But Slade, I want to get your thoughts.
Yeah, so I guess I was reading into it after that news had come out, and it was interesting to see that, like you had said, it's like $280,000 was spent just on Arch Manning's weekend. It was him and I think 8 other recruits that were there that weekend.
Hmm.
Uh, they broke it down to basically the airfare and cars that were waiting for them. Uh, there was a five-star hotel for all of the players and their parents. The parents had an open bar the entire weekend. I'm sure that can get pricey since they're not following around the kid the entire time. They're just there while the kid's going off with the players and coaches.
Yeah.
There was a whole Topgolf day. They had custom cakes, ice sculptures, and a lake cruise.
Yeah.
Pretty ridiculous. It did come out though that 4 of those recruits have signed with Arch Manning. So of the 9, I mean, they have 5 signed for that weekend. I guess it was last year Texas spent like $2.7 million on recruiting. It has come out that schools are just throwing extra money at this. There's a small school in Florida, I forget which one it was, but they just added $55,000 to their recruiting efforts just to try and help out, which I mean, 55,000 is
Yeah.
not going to do much when you're looking at $250,000 on one weekend, but
Yeah. No, I mean, when I got recruited to go to college, there was nothing. I went and I visited Castleton. I got a tour of the school. I met with the coach. I met a couple players, and he was like, "Okay, there you go." And then once I got there, we did like overnight visits, especially in season and stuff. Kids would come visit. We hang out with them for the day. They got free food, but that was it. Other than that, they slept in a dorm room with us, and they hung out with the guys. So just and I understand Division 1 and Division 3 have always been very different, but just, like, when that came out, I was like, "Sorry," like, I had to pay for my own travel to get there. These guys are staying at the Four Seasons and, like, the suites
eggs
all
Benedict breakfast.
yeah. I mean, that to me, like, I understand, like, this is what it's come down to, and this is what you need to do, but at the same time, this is getting a little out of hand. Um, I mean, I know the NCAA won't do anything about it, but I would like them I would like to see them step in and, like, cap it, like, "Hey, you get $1,000 per recruit, and, like, that's it." And, like, they can sleep in the dorms. You can take them to Topgolf, that's fine, but, like, that's
They'll still cheat around it.
oh, yeah. I mean, they always do, but over $200,000 for 1 weekend is
Mhm.
extreme. Um, but, yeah, like you said, that's just the world that we're living in now, and that's where we're headed. So it sucks, but every school's
George
doing it. I don't think anybody's spending that much like Texas is, but Texas is desperate, so it makes sense.
So 2 years ago, Georgia actually led the country in most money spent on recruiting at $3.6 million.
Yeah.
That
I
was
mean,
after only spending $800,000 the first year during COVID because there was a limit put on that year of what schools could spend for recruiting due to COVID and just not knowing what was gonna happen, from a financial state for the schools.
right. And I mean, clearly it's paid off for Georgia. I don't think it'll
Mhm.
pay off the same way for Texas, but that's just my 2 cents. Um,
Maybe Arch Manning can use like $500 to pay for that tattoo when he takes him to the conference
yeah.
championship.
I mean, hey, if they want to pay for my tattoo, I'll get a whole thing on my back. I don't even care at that point. Um, but yeah, like I said, this is just where college football is heading now.
Mhm.
So I understand it, but wow, like when that came out yesterday, I was driving. I literally had to stop, and I was like, "There's no way." And I started reading the article, and I mean, hey, good for them if they have that kind of money to spend. I mean,
Mhm.
they made their stadium look like a giant ovary, but I mean, it is what it is. Moving on, came out on Sunday morning, almost 2 hours after the game ended for Nebraska and Georgia Southern. That Nebraska fired Scott Frost. I don't think anybody didn't see this coming. A lot of people thought they were going to wait until the buyout period kicked in on October 1st, and they said, "No, we're done now." And they fire him a week before the Oklahoma game. Scott Frost was an alumni of Nebraska. They brought him in. He was supposed to be the prodigal son to resurrect that program. It did not happen. I was always a huge Scott Frost fan just because he was Oregon's offensive coordinator for a little while. He was our offensive coordinator when we went to the national title game and we lost to Ohio State. Um, so I wanted to see him succeed. It sucks that he didn't, but it was definitely time for him to move on. So a lot of names have been thrown around as possible head coaching candidates. I'm going to go through my 5 favorite and a few that I don't think are candidates at all. But again, this is just my opinion. So first up, who I think is out of the running. I'm going to go with any Power Five coach. Matt Campbell has been thrown around a lot. Mark Stoops and Chris Kleiman from Kansas State has been thrown around a lot. I think these guys are in much better situations right now. They don't want to go to Nebraska and deal with the headaches. Um, I think they understand a lot of what's happening behind the scenes at Nebraska between the boosters, the ADs, and things like that. And they just don't want to deal with it. I also think that the respective schools we're at now are going to back up the Brinks trucks to pay them this year, just to make sure they stay. Matt Campbell's done a great job of building up Iowa State. He is kind of hitting his glass ceiling there. It seems, they've plateaued off the last couple of years. Um, hey, if he can get a great recruiting class in there, he could definitely be challenged for the Big 12 title, especially with Oklahoma leaving here soon. Um, so it'd be interesting to see. Maybe he does. People come out and said he wants to go there, and so we shall wait and see. But I don't see it happening for those three coaches. Like I said, I think they're backing up the Brinks truck for them. Another one was a defensive coordinator from Wisconsin, Leonhard. Um, I think he's in a much better situation, and he doesn't want to go to a divisional rival and have to play against the head coach who has given him a great job for the last few years. Yeah, he's one of the best defensive coordinators in the country. He might leave for a head coaching job this year, but I don't see it being a divisional rival. And then the last one I'm saying is out of the running is uh, Urban Meyer. I don't think any school wants to deal with Urban Meyer right now. I understand he's a great coach, but I think there's just too many outside factors going on around him that no school wants to take the chance on. But I may be wrong. Um, as far as the 5 coaches, I think Nebraska should be looking at and are looking at. First up, we have Charles Huff from Marshall. Obviously, he just got a huge statement win last week, upsetting a number 8 Notre Dame team on the road. Um, but he has done a great job of turning that Marshall program around. He has also coached at Power 5 schools, not as a head coach, as an assistant, but he coached at Penn State for 4 years, Mississippi State for 1 year, and Alabama for 2 years, where he was the assistant head coach before getting the Marshall job. So that is definitely a name. He has a lot of experience, and especially Big Ten experience, being at Penn State for 4 years. So that is absolutely somebody that I think deserves a Power 5 shot. He will most likely get it this year. I don't know if it'll be from Nebraska or not. Moving on, we have Jamie Chadwell, who was the Coastal Carolina head coach. We've seen what he has done with that program for the last few years. They've been consistently ranked in the top 25 in the country, challenging for the Sun Belt title. Um, he came up through much smaller schools in the South. He was never a Division 1 head coach, mainly Division 2 or FCS. Got the offensive coordinator job at Coastal a few years ago, and then Joe Magnola had to step away for health reasons. He gets promoted to interim head coach. Did such a great job. They made him the full-time head coach, and of course, in 2020 they had that magical season. And he's been on a lot of people's radars here lately. So I think he's going to get a step up to probably a Power 5 school this year. Moving on, and this is probably my favorite to take the job. There hasn't been a lot of talk about it, but I think Nebraska would be really smart to hire Matt Rule. Matt Rule is, of course, the Carolina Panthers head coach right now. I don't think that's lasting any longer than this year. He might get fired midseason like Scott Frost just did. But for me, the biggest thing is how well he did in college before he left. And we saw this with a lot of college coaches. I think Pete Carroll is one of the only ones that has ever gone from NCAA to NFL and had real success. But so Matt Rule took over at Temple after Steve Adazio left to go to Boston College. He struggled there for a couple years, had mediocre seasons, and then all of a sudden in 2015, that team exploded. They were threatening to make the college football playoff. They were undefeated, and they lost to Notre Dame at home. Primetime on ESPN, College Game Day was there and everything. But it was a close game. It was a really good game. That was a really good team. They went on to lose the American Conference Championship game. The next year, they came back and won that conference, though. He then moves on to Baylor, and this is a Baylor program that was decimated by what Art Briles did to it with all the sexual harassment allegations and recruiting conduct violations and things like that. This is a program who you think back to, much like Penn State, when they had all the issues with Jerry Sandusky. It was basically a death penalty sentence for that team. Matt Rule goes in there, and he put his heart and soul into that team. He got it turned around, and they end up making the Sugar Bowl. They did lose to or they lost to Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship in his last season there, and then he went on to the NFL. He has shown a tendency to turn decent programs with decent history around and done great things there. I think Nebraska is a much better situation than what Baylor was when he took over there. I think if he wanted to go back to college and take on that challenge, I think this is absolutely the place for him to do it. But we'll have to wait and see. Next up, a lot of people are talking about is Mickey Joseph, who is now the interim head coach at Nebraska. He spent some time at LSU, and he was the wide receiver coach that developed that stacked room in 2019. So he definitely has the experience. He's been there for 2 years now. And so this is somebody who, if Nebraska kind of wants to keep the train rolling in the same direction, just with better leadership, this will be their guy. It'll be less turnover among the rest of the coaches as well. So this could be something, if they're trying to save a little bit of money after wasting an extra $7.5 million, this could absolutely be something that they look at doing. And the last one I just spoke about, the Penn State, coming back from the scandals. Bill O'Brien, I think, is on Nebraska's radar as well. He's offensive coordinator at Alabama right now. We've seen this time and time again. A coach that struggled, NFL, college, whatever it may be, goes to Alabama to be an assistant. Then they turn into be, a really good coach there. They go on. We've talked about it before. But Bill O'Brien has coached before and coached in the Big Ten. He took over Penn State after Joe Paterno left, and I felt like he did a really good job there. I think he saved that program and got it pointed in the right direction. James Franklin comes in and just takes that program to the next level, and now here they are. Bill O'Brien definitely has what it takes, and we've seen it the last few years. He's worked with some really great players. He's developed Bryce Young into a Heisman winner and, again, a candidate for this year. And he's worked with some guy named Tom Brady. I'm not exactly sure who that was. But he definitely has what it takes. Now, the only question for him is, does he want to do it? Or there's been a lot of talk about him, just wanting to hang out until Bill Belichick retires and he goes take over that job. I don't think the Patriots want to do that, but we're going to have to wait and see on that. But those are my 5 candidates. Again, I think Matt Rule is my favorite to take that job. But I think those are all 5 great candidates. And again, I don't see any coach leaving their Power 5 position to take that mantle up. But that's just me. And we'll have to wait and see. I think this will be a very interesting coaching search because Nebraska is desperate. They want to turn this program around. I think they're willing to pay a lot. Obviously, we saw that they're paying a lot just to get rid of their old head coach. Slade, just your thoughts real quick before we move on.
Yeah, so I think that just based on them firing Scott Frost 2 weeks before, 2.5 weeks before his buyout moves from 15 million to 7.1 million, I think that that's just showing that they're just trying to get away from him. I think that, like you had mentioned, I think that they probably want to keep the train rolling in the direction it's going, just with different leadership. So I think that based on them just throwing an extra $7 million out there for him to just leave. I mean, you saw the video of him sliding down the railing. Who knows if that was that day or if that was like last year or something like that. But it was just funny that came out after that. But I think they're going to stick with their interim head coach. I think that they're going to stick with him next year and see how he does with a whole year. And if he's not able to do what they're expecting, then I see them, like you said, putting their money where their mouth is and going out and getting a high recruit or a high talented coach, sort of like Matt Rule or even Bill Belichick, depending. Like that would give him an extra year at Alabama. Kind of fits into a lot of the things you were saying.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, if Joseph goes out there and beats Oklahoma this week, I think he's already earning aces as a head coach. Um, but yeah, this is a good Nebraska team. Like a lot of people just think they're bad. They're not. They are a good team. They put up a lot of points. Their defense is iffy, but I mean, they just play to their opponent's level. And the problem is when they do that, especially with these lower tier schools, is you give them a chance. And we've said it for the last 2 weeks now. If you give these lower tier schools a chance, they are going to fight with everything they have to pull off that upset. Um, but overall, I really do think this is a good Nebraska team. They just needed better leadership. They need to learn how to finish games off. If Joseph can do that, then yeah, he absolutely deserves it. I mean, he has 8 weeks now left to prove, or 10 weeks now left to prove. 7. He has a couple weeks left now to prove what he has as a head coach. And I hope he does well. I hope for Tony's sake he does well. We're gonna have to wait and see. I told Tony to put my name in, call up Nebraska and let him know because he's out
Yeah.
there right now. But I don't think he did that.
Is he going to the game today?
Yeah, he'll be there. He was at the Georgia Southern game last week.
That's awesome.
But moving on, it is time once again for our upset alerts. I don't know if you've seen the TikTok that we've made, but if we put you on upset alert, you got to pay attention. I put Notre Dame on upset alert last week. They lost. You've had a couple close calls now, but it is
UTSA almost got it done. I think that
they pushed it to overtime.
yeah.
But it is time once again for our upset alert. Up first, we're going to go with Nick's here. He's putting Michigan State on upset alert. They are at Washington this week. I think that's going to be a really good game. Washington has looked good through its first 2 weeks under the new head coach, but Michigan State travels all the way out here. Nick actually gave me some notes to read this time. He said Washington can put up points and they're at home with a lot of confidence and momentum after 2 dominating performances to start the season. Michigan State struggled for long stretches in the season opener against Western Michigan and then whooped up on arguably the worst team in college football in Akron. Both of those games were at home. They also have a tough 3-game stretch coming up versus an underrated Minnesota team at Maryland and then at home against Ohio State. So he thinks they might be looking ahead and they could easily get caught up in that. But I definitely agree Washington can hang with Michigan State. I think this is going to be a close game. I still haven't – Washington has played really cheap opponents so far, so I haven't seen enough out of them for me to be like, yeah, no, this is a good team yet. I think they're headed in the right direction, but I just need to wait and see more. But I think this is going to be a very good game. Slade, you got any thoughts on that game?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm a little confused. I mean, I understand from a ranking perspective, but Washington's favored in this game by 3.5 points.
Did you miss this conversation the other day?
I guess, yeah, because I guess is he saying just from like a ranking standpoint right now? Okay.
Yeah. No, because he asked, he's like, if the team's favored, does it really count as an upset? And I was like, I mean, who's gonna correct us?
Right.
Obviously, Slade will correct us.
No. I was just confused at it, like when because obviously, like he said, every point that he made is very valid and correct. I just was looking at it from a betting standpoint, and I was like, wait, if I wanted to bet the upset, I would actually be betting with the crowd.
Moving on.
Everyone knows it's an upset.
Yeah. Moving on to your upset alert. Who do you got?
Yeah. So this week, who did I go with? Shit, Texas Tech. Well, you gonna ring the bell?
No.
Oh, okay. So I have Texas Tech over NC State. I think that NC State has played very well so far. But I just think that Texas Tech has been playing some solid football these past 2 weeks, and I think that they're going to be able to keep it close enough. This is at NC State, but I think that they're going to be able to keep it close enough that when it comes to the end, they're going to be able to get a turnover and at least get I don't know, maybe 3-point win. Yeah, I think it's going to be to where they're able to have 3 points. NC State has the ball. They're going down to try and kick a field goal to tie it up, and they get a turnover.
Yeah. And for those of you wondering what Slade was talking about with the bell, so we're going to start a swear jar here on Jack Wagon Sports for both Out of the Tunnel and our regular podcast we do weekly. So every time we swear, we got to put $1 in it. And then at the end of a period for Out of the Tunnel, so at the end of the season, we'll take that jar um, and we will put all that money on a sports bet and we'll go from there. Um, but no, I couldn't find a good sound last night. So
Okay.
but moving on to my upset alert, I'm putting Texas on upset alert. They're playing UTSA at home. They got ranked this week. I think they're kind of going to be licking their wounds a little bit from last week. UTSA is a really good team, and this is two teams that play to their opponent's level. So Texas usually plays down to their opponents or up, like we just saw last week with Alabama. UTSA always plays up. They just have terrible defense. Their quarterback is one of the best in the country, though. He already has almost 700 yards passing, so he definitely can sling the ball around. Um, like I said, I think Texas is licking their wounds just a little too much right now. Quinn Ewers is going to be out, so now they got to rely on the backup QB who showed he can definitely move the ball, but is he going to come into this game maybe a little overconfident or just a little more relaxed and kind of struggle? This is going to be a high scoring game, and we've said it before. I'll say it again. If you let these lower tier teams hang around, especially at a game like where they're playing the big boys at Texas, it could definitely be upset city. Um, so I think Texas just has a lot going on right now, and UTSA can definitely go in there and sneak out a win. Moving on, it is time for our cash out picks once again. So we'll bring these to you guys every week. These are the bets that we're putting in. So first up, we have Nick's cash out picks. Just picking on Iowa more and more, but I don't see any reason not to take this. We have Nevada at Iowa. He took the under at 38.5. I 100% agree. As long as Petrus and Brian Ferentz are working together, this is going to be a terrible offense. Their defense is really good, one of the best in the country, but they cannot score to save their life. And on the other hand, he is taking the Purdue at Syracuse over at 58.5. Slade, what do you got?
Yeah, so, for mine this week, I have, Miami at +6. They're going into Texas A&M this week. Texas A&M has had a rough start to the season, in my opinion, and so I just think that this is their chance to get in there and possibly win, but at least keep it within a touchdown, you know? I think that that's definitely doable for them. And then my second one is, Georgia against South Carolina. I'm doing the under at 55.5. Georgia hasn't gone over 55.5 points, nor have they let their opponents. So like the total of their games
You
haven't
don't need
kind
to
of let.
remind me.
Yeah. So I think that this is doable. Spencer Rattler has kind of been inconsistent in that he'll throw a touchdown and then two interceptions and then a touchdown. I think that his touchdown to interceptions are pretty close right now, just through two games. So I think that it's very doable for Georgia's defense to keep South Carolina from scoring more than two touchdowns today. I'm sure that they could get a couple field goals, and then Georgia just really keeps their defense on the field for most of the point today, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I watched that Arkansas game last week a little bit with South Carolina, and Rattler would go out there and look really good for 2 or 3 drives in a row, and all of a sudden come out and he just couldn't hit his targets. He was overthrowing, throwing some picks. Um, so this offense definitely has the potential there to be really good. I think Rattler's still kind of learning Beamer's system a little bit, but I think Georgia's defense, again, they shut out Sanford. They held Oregon to 3 points. Listen, outside of Oregon, I know Sanford isn't much to look at, but this is a defense that we thought was going to take a step back after last season when they lost a couple key players, like Jordan Davis, especially on that front seven. And, here they are just dominating the country again. So, yeah, I think they get up early 35-0. They take out Barrett, and they just
Oh,
kind
yeah.
of chill. So, yeah, I can absolutely see. No, it's Stetson Bennett. I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, this is again. I think they get up early and then they just kind of coast at the end.
Mhm.
As far as my cash out picks, I'm taking the Michigan State plus 3.5. Again, I think they're just a little too good for Washington yet. Washington's headed the right direction, and I know they're at home, but I definitely like Michigan there. And I'm taking the Nebraska. That's supposed to be plus 11. Um, but again, they play to the level of their opponent. They're going to keep this a one-score game. They're going to hang around, and they might just pull off the upset at home. Uh, and I'm very excited to see that game later. But it is time once again for our picks. And speaking of that game, we have Oklahoma at Nebraska. This will be the big noon game on Fox. Oklahoma is favored by 11. The over/under is set at 58. We're getting Nick's pick here. He's going with Oklahoma. Slade, who do you got?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Oklahoma also. I think, unfortunately, against your pick, I think that Oklahoma's kinda gonna be close against Nebraska because it's at home for Nebraska, and then I think the second half, they're gonna make the changes, and they're gonna end up being able to at least get a two-score win here today.
Yeah. I'm going to go with Oklahoma as well. Nebraska has gained 492.3 yards so far this season. They have also allowed 492 yards. So their offense has looked really good at times. Casey Thompson needs to get his consistency down, and his receivers need to learn how to catch the ball. But their defense is their biggest problem. They have a pretty decent run defense, but their passing defense, outside of their one safety, has been awful all season. Um, Now, one thing we need to let you guys know here is when all three of us pick the same team, it is officially now known as the Jack Wagon Sports Jinx Alert. So if you're a fan of Oklahoma, we apologize, as just about every time all three of us pick the same school, they go on to lose. So that is your Jack Wagon Sports Jinx Alert for this week. Moving on to Slade's game of the day, we have Penn State at Auburn. This will be 3:30 on CBS. Penn State is a 2.5-point favorite. The over/under set at 48. Nick, not surprisingly, goes with Penn State. Slade, who do you got?
Yeah, I'm going with Penn State also. I think that I had said it earlier in the week in our other podcast, but I think that this is the week that Penn State's win would have gotten them ranked. I don't think that they should have been ranked after last week, so I think this is the week that they're able to get like a field goal win and get themselves solidified into the rankings.
Yeah. For me, Penn State has kind of found the run game a little bit the past few weeks, especially over last season. They've averaged 83 yards a game over the first two games. Um, Auburn has a strength in run stoppage, though. So Penn State needs to get their run game going, especially today, to have a balanced attack. Whether it's Clifford or Alar in the backfield, running things, um, they need that balance to run some play action and spread everybody out and keep the offense moving. Um, TJ Finley has not played great for Auburn at QB. If they can get pressure on him, we've seen how great that defensive line has played for Penn State this year. That is definitely something to watch. And then you have Joey Porter Jr. in the secondary. So anytime you have him roaming back there, he's definitely going to make some plays and just make it a little bit tougher. But if Penn State can win this, this will be a huge momentum building win, because whether Auburn is ever a good team or a bad team, whenever you play there, it is a very tough environment. It's almost like Penn State when they're bad. It's still a tough environment, especially for big games like this. And so it's going to be difficult for Penn State. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just gonna kind of put in that Auburn's weak part right now is their passing offense. They have not been able,
Yeah.
like you said, the quarterback has had a lot of trouble. And Penn State's weak part is their passing defense. So I think that that is a part that if Auburn turns around their passing offense this week, that would be a way for them to get a win. If Penn State's able to turn up their passing defense, then I think that that will help solidify their win today.
Yeah. But as far as my pick, I'm going to go with Penn State. Just kidding. I wouldn't do that to you guys because I like you. I'm going to go with Auburn. Again, I think this is a tough environment to go into. I think this is going to be a great game. I think it's going to be close. But I'm going to go with Auburn just because, like I said, I like you guys. Moving on, we have BYU, who's jumping up the rankings, especially after upsetting Baylor last week. Again, it wasn't really an upset because they were favored at home. But number 12 BYU at number 25 Oregon. This will be the 3:30 game on Fox. Oregon is somehow a 3.5-point favorite. The over/under is set at 58. Nick goes with Oregon. Slade, who do you got?
Yeah, so I'm also going with Oregon. I wanted to pick the over in this, but just after last week, I don't know. Everything in the college football world is all over the place, so I'm just going with the money line here in this pick.
So speaking of the defenses here, BYU has just given up 10.25 points per game so far and only 142 yards per game. That is outstanding, especially for who they played. Oregon really struggled against a standout defense in Georgia we saw in week one. They had a decent run game, but they had to abandon it early because they were getting down too much too soon. So I would like to see them keep it closer and stick with the run game longer. But I'm gonna go against my team, and I'm gonna take BYU on the road. Again, their defense is, and I think, is one of the best in the country right now. And until Bo Nix shows me he can beat a defense like that, I I I, I think Oregon can win this game absolutely. But Bo Nix needs to show me more. Um, Moving on, we have Troy at App State. College game day is there right now. I think this is going to be one of the best environments in all of college football this week. Uh, so as far as who we're taking, Nick takes App State at home. Slade, who do you got?
Yeah, so I went with the same. I think that App State has outscored Troy by like 3 touchdowns the last 4 or 5 meetings. So I'm thinking that they get a big win here with College game day there.
Yeah. App State is favored by 13.5. The over/under is set at 52. This will be 3:30 on ESPN Plus. Yeah, App State has beaten Troy by a combined 121 points over the last 4 meetings. They'll be riding a high from last week. They might come out a little sluggish to start, but I think, especially in the second half, they're going to ride that crowd. And I think it's not going to be close. So I'm going to take App State as well, which
Yeah,
again
right.
makes this the Jack Wagon Sports Jinx Alert. Moving on, we have a surprising Kansas team at Houston. This will be the 4 o'clock game on ESPNU. Houston is an 8.5 point favorite. The over/under is set at 58. Nick goes with Kansas. Surprisingly, Slade, who do you got?
Yeah, I'm going with Houston. I think that the line is set pretty good. I think that they're going to at least be able to get a one-score win here today.
Yeah. So just a couple quick facts for you guys. Kansas has not won 2 games in a row since 2018. They have not started out 2-0 since 2011, and 2009 was the last time they started 3-0 and won 3 or more games in a row. That you're gonna have to wait till 2023 to change that. I'm gonna go with Houston at home. I think this is a great game. I'm very proud of Kansas for showing their potential. I can't wait for them to upset Texas later in the year. Um, but they're gonna let Houston alone this week. So I'm taking Houston at home. Moving on, we have Mississippi State at LSU. Slade, who you got?
Yeah, I'm going with Mississippi State here. I think the line's at -3, but I think they're going to be able to get at least a touchdown win here today, especially on the road. I think that Brian Kelly is going to show this season that he was the reason Notre Dame wasn't able to get to that final point, the top of the nation in college football. So I think that's what's going to be shown.
Yeah, Nick also goes with Mississippi State here. Um, Mississippi State and LSU through the first 2 weeks have each scored 44 points per game and allowed 20 points per game. So very even teams coming into this matchup. Um, but for me, LSU just doesn't have the run game or the run defense, or excuse me, just the run game for that matter. Um, I think Brian Kelly gets booed out of the stadium today, and so I'm going to take Mississippi State on the road as well. They are a 3 point favorite. The over under is set at 53. Moving on to the next game. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed it. This is a Jack Wagon Jinx alert for this week as well. We have what I think is going to be one of the best games this weekend.
Mhm.
We have Texas Tech at North Carolina State. I really wanted to go to this game. Tickets were down to $35 when I looked last night. This will be 7 p.m. on ESPN2. NC State opens as a 10 point favorite. The over under is set at 56. Nick is going to go with NC State at home. Slade, who do you got?
Yeah, this is my upset alert of the week. So I think that Texas Tech is going to be able to get the win here. I'm going to take them at +10, but I think that they're going to be able to get it closer and get the win today.
Yeah, I'm going to take NC State at home. Texas Tech is going to bring their Big 12 patented offense there, though. I think this is going to be a high scoring affair. I see this as a back and forth game all day. Um, but I think it's NC State gets it done at home. But again, I think it's a little bit closer than 10 points. Moving on to our next game, we have UTSA at Texas. This will be 8 p.m. on the Longhorn Network. Texas is a 12.5 point favorite. The over under is set at 58. Nick is going to take Texas at home. Slade, who do you got?
Yeah, I'm going with Texas as well. I think that they're going to run the ball to start the game, get their quarterback a little bit of confidence before he starts slinging the ball.
Yeah. Again, like I mentioned earlier, these are 2 teams that play to their opponent's level. We saw it last week where Texas kind of came out, shocked a lot of people, and they hung with Alabama for 4 quarters. UTSA has played at a ranked team. They've played an unranked team, and they've gone to overtime with both of them. So I think they hang with Texas. Their offense is next level. Their defense, their passing defense just sucks, which is going to be a good break for Hudson Card to like kind of get his feet under him. But at the same time, Is he going to take the week off then? Is everything from last week going to catch up with Texas? Are they going to be licking their wounds? So I'm going to take UTSA on the road. I will never pick Texas. Moving on, we have Miami at Texas A&M. This will be 9 p.m. on ESPN. Texas A&M opens as a 6-point favorite. The over/under is set at 44.5. Nick takes Texas A&M at home. Slade, who do you got?
Yeah, I'm going with Miami. I think that they're going to be able to get a statement win this weekend. Not really from a ranking perspective, but just from who they're going to be playing the rest of the season. I think Miami's definitely going to be able to get that win today.
Yeah. Mario Cristobal, the new head coach at Miami, has brought his patented slow starts against really bad opponents that he patented at Oregon. But another thing he did at Oregon is he, won huge road games against big opponents. We saw that last year against Ohio State. They played Auburn on a neutral field a couple years ago, and that went right down to the wire. I think he takes that same thing there. Jimbo Fisher has a super outdated offense. App State was able to expose that. And I think Miami exposes it even more. I think the calls for Jimbo Fisher to get out are starting to grow a little bit. So I'm going to take Miami out on the road. In the very last game, we are going to be picking this week San Diego State at Utah. This is a little bit of a revenge game for Utah as they lost to San Diego State last year. This will be 10 p.m. on ESPN2. Utah is a 21-point favorite. The over/under is set at 49, so it's Pac-12 after dark, so some weird things are going to happen. Nick is taking Utah at home. Slade, who do you got?
Yeah, I'm also taking Utah at home. I think, like you said, it's going to get crazy. Those late-night games do, but I think they're still able to get the win.
Yeah, this is a San Diego State team coming into the season. I think all of us had a lot of hype behind, especially after the year they had last year. Like, oh, hey, they can take the next step this year. And then I forgot Braxton Burmeister was their quarterback. He has a QBR right now of 22.9. And yeah, that's and last week against Idaho State, he threw for only 108 yards on 15 completions. You have to try to be that bad. But I think Utah brings their top 30 defense, to the table. I think they blow out San Diego State at home. They get a little revenge for last year. And once again, all three of us picking them. This makes it a Jack Wigan Sports Jinx alert. So we'll have to see how many teams we ruined this week. As far as our show, that will do it for today. We thank you all so much for checking us out. As always, we have a lot of fun bringing this to you every Saturday. Hopefully all three of us will finally be together next Saturday. Please go check out our weekly podcast. We post that on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. We do this every Saturday, like I just mentioned. We would appreciate if you would follow our TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. And have a great Saturday. Go enjoy College Game Day. Enjoy a day full of football. And we will see you guys next week.